the U.S. Institute of Peace, after the Taliban took over Afghanistan, they wrote a piece called "Why the Taliban's Successful Opium Ban is Bad for Afghanistan and Bad for the World." And they openly called on the Taliban.
We're not getting enough opium.
Yes.
Mike, it's a problem.
Right. But the opium was funding the entire paramilitary network in Syria. Everyone says, "Oh, ISIS traffics in drugs. Al-Qaeda traffics in drugs." Well, guess what? ISIS and Al-Qaeda, with the full backing of the Biden government, just successfully overthrew the Biden administration's top enemy in the region, and now have opened up all their markets to Chevron and AT&T. And what I'm saying is they were openly, this same group that is working with these Taliban networks and these Afghan special forces and is deeply, deeply involved in Syria, is openly calling, and this is not that they got busted paying these Taliban officials when Trump tried to assert control over the U.S. Institute of Peace, because it's chartered by Congress. It has 15 members of its board. 3 of them are mandatory. The Secretary of State, the Secretary of Defense, and the President of the National Defense University are 3 reserved spots. So think about this. This is the U.S. Institute of Peace, but required on the board is the Secretary of War, the head of the War Institute, and the Secretary of State. And then there are 12 political appointee spots. Now, the Trump administration tried to assert control over the U.S. Institute of Peace, as it is statutorily entitled to do. And the response from the U.S. Institute of Peace was to barricade the doors, to delete, Doge said, a terabyte worth of financial data, which Doge says it recovered and showed payments to those very Taliban networks that they were saying keep the drugs flowing. And so evidently, according to the Doge team, they found weapons caches inside, like a full military,
They found weapons inside the Institute of Peace?
That was what Doge reported. They said
we're back to Orwell now.
Right.
Right. The peace people are stockpiling weapons.
But recently, so this has gone through the courts because, the whole blob resistance has been trying to stop all these shutdowns at every layer. The outside general counsel for the U.S. Institute of Peace who has been the outside general counsel since 1986, just 2 years. So the guy who's the head lawyer there has been the head lawyer there since just 2 years after it was founded, since the mid 1980s. So has been, midwifing the legal dark arts of this thing since almost the day it was born. And he's the one who I believe has spearheaded or been leading this lawsuit to stop the federal government's, because the Trump administration cleared the board. The U.S. Institute of Peace would not even allow the Trump-appointed board members or its president to even go in the building. That's why the federal police the FBI had to come in but what happened was that same lawyer also happens to represent the Wireless Trade Association in the U.S. and AT&T in that whole network. So while they are working for regime change in Syria, while the U.S. Institute of Peace is taking U.S. taxpayer money, $55 million a year, to build up this network of paramilitary groups and all these economic assistance programs and midwifing the political negotiations and creating a unified, cohesive bloc against the Assad government in Syria, with U.S. Institute of Peace funds, the same lawyer who's now successfully sued because Judge Beryl Howe blocked the Trump administration's attempt. Now we're back to square one with that. He simultaneously is representing the Wireless Trade Association, where Syria just, turned over its IT infrastructure to AT&T. So, just think about that. You've got the U.S. Institute of Peace organizing this regime change in Syria, including using, these narco traffic drugs while calling for the narco networks to keep going. And simultaneously, the senior executives effectively, I know he's top outside counsel, but the senior executives effectively are representing the companies that are the direct beneficiaries of this regime change action. So it doesn't matter if it's good for U.S. national security or U.S. national interest to topple Bashar al-Assad, because they have a fundamentally unique and singular benefit, whether it's good for us or not, which is that they get rich from it.
So no matter how you feel about Donald Trump, it's hard to deny that his second term has been a whirlwind. It's amazing how fast this administration is advancing its agenda, deporting illegal aliens, slashing government waste, an entirely new trade strategy. No one has ever seen anything like it. They are not messing around. Now, many people are thrilled by this fast start, but it's going to take a lot more than this to achieve the ultimate goal. And that's why our friends at the Heritage Foundation are mobilizing supporters, patriots across the country, to support this administration and the broader conservative movement, and they need your help to do that. You can go to heritage.org/survey to complete their national survey on Donald Trump's second term agenda. What you tell them will help their team work with the White House to make the president's campaign promises a reality. I used to work at Heritage 35 years ago, gave me my first job. I've always been grateful for that. Heritage is not like every other think tank in D.C., almost all of which are part of the problem. Heritage is fighting the problem. I can say that. Go to heritage.org/survey to help them fill out the survey. Heritage.org/survey.
I remember reading about the fascists, and one of the criticisms that I thought really resonated was they eliminated the difference between the state and, they were socialists, truly, yeah. And in Germany and in Italy, and there was you couldn't sort of tell where the German government ended and Krupps began, and you know what I mean? And that's bad.
Yes.
I thought it was bad then. I think it's bad now, and I hate to see it happen here.
Well, it's funny you say that, because last week at the Council on Foreign Relations, I think the panel was titled "Reflections on Reflections on the Post-Soviet Era and Implications for the Modern Day." This is Council on Foreign Relations, and one of the questions asked the panelists directly was, there was a deep state in Russia in the 1990s, these oligarchs.
Yes.
And we lost control over Russia. They're basically analogizing Trump to Putin. And they're saying we had all this control. We had total control over Russia during the Boris Yeltsin period. And we had all these relationships with the Russian oligarchs. But then Putin had a natural advantage as being the head of state, was somehow able to take over the Russian deep state, and then we lost control over Russia.
This is right. This is like the heart of it that nobody ever says. It's Putin's decision to decapitate the oligarchy. That's the reason they hate him.
Well, what they say is that he also co-opted it and got the oligarchy working for him rather than for outside.
And in the meantime, the Russian economy recovered and life expectancy went up and alcoholism went down and it became a beautiful country. The oligarchy wasn't serving Russia. That's kind of the point.
Well, the punchline to this is, at the end of setting this question up, the guy at Council on Foreign Relations asks, so with those lessons, given that that's what happened with Putin, how can we preserve the deep state against Trump to save, so that the deep state can save us? This is a direct quote.
Sick.
And
this is sick.
But again, look at Chubais and the Russian oligarchs that were working directly with USAID and the Harvard Institute for International Development. And it's the same thing with Brown and Root. That story of Brown and Root and Soros in Gabon in the 1970s. It was the same thing in Russia there, where we justified, because it was in U.S. national security and national interests, to make Russia a democracy and to privatize all their state-owned assets. USAID paid $500 million to the Harvard Institute for International Development, again, another one of these universities that's delegated by the U.S. government to go deeper into Russian society than the U.S. government wanted to be seen doing. Very clever name, right? U.S. Agency for International Development pays the Harvard Institute for International Development. It's just a Harvard spawn of USAID, in order to work with Chubais and all these Russian oligarchs, so that the Russian oligarchs got rich selling at discount bargain basement prices all these Russian state-held assets,
exactly,
in non-competitive bids where only two outside bidders were allowed to participate: the Harvard Management Fund for the Harvard Endowment and the George Soros Quantum Fund.
So it's just looting. It's looting. And by the way, it really, the country, I mean, look at the numbers. Like the life expectancy for men in Russia in, 1996 was like 55. I mean, it was awful to do that to people. Like, what did your average Russian do wrong? They lived through 70 years of communism, and this is what you do to them once they're, quote, liberated. It's like, it's really a moral crime.
And part of that issue is as they were driving our own country on a similar path,
exactly,
they expressed the exact same contempt that someone would try to do something to stop it. And the other thing is they fully acknowledged it was a deep state before Putin. They were just mad that they lost control of the deep state, which is why why a lot of these actions by the early Trump administration have terrified them around co-opting parts of the business community.
Exactly.
They hate, for example, Elon Musk. They made this whole campaign to drive Elon, away or to go after Tesla. The reaction to Jeff Bezos, for example, and his posture around reorienting the Washington Post, and sort of the Bill Kristol class was apoplectic that these commercial drivers in the sort of business community, but really this is the private for-profit sector, that they would go along with Trump's foreign policy agenda, with Trump's reforms, maybe to be in Trump's good graces. But the fact is that state, which was such a powerful asset to them, they do not want that handed off to somebody who might oppose them. The same reason that they didn't want Matt Gaetz at the Justice Department. They weaponized that Justice Department under Merrick Garland. They don't want that baton handed off to someone else. It's not that they have a problem with corruption at the Justice Department. They want a monopoly on that corruption.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. We hope you'll subscribe to it. And by the way, you can hit the little bell on there and get notifications every time we produce a video. We hope you'll do that also.